We often underestimate the technological capabilities of our ancestors. Sure, the civilizations that existed thousands of years ago didn't have the internet, but they still came up with some incredible inventions that pushed their eras forward and made huge differences to their societies. Some of those inventions are even still in use today. This video is a celebration of ancient and wonderful inventions and technologies, and the geniuses who came up with them. Your first thought upon seeing the giant Norias of Hama is probably that they're enormous Ferris wheels. That would be wrong. They also look a little bit like the type of watermill wheels that were popular during the 16th century. That's a little closer to the truth because they are water wheels, but they're much older than that. These impressive structures weren't built 400 years ago. Their true age is much closer to 2,500. You'll find them in Hara in Syria, where 17 of them are still standing today. It's thought that there were once several more of them, but major conflicts in the area over the passing centuries have destroyed a few. Our estimate of their age comes from their first recorded appearance in a historical context, which is a mosaic created in the city of Apamea in 469 BCE. This invention meant that the people of ancient Syria were using an advanced irrigation system to bring safe drinking water into Hama during a time when many other people in other parts of the world were still cupping water into their hands out of streams or rivers to drink it. Sadly, history has forgotten the name of the person responsible for their design. As fall gives way to winter, many of us turn on our central heating systems to stay warm. We wince at the difference in our power bills, but we're glad this modern invention exists to keep us from freezing. Central heating isn't really a modern invention, though. It can be traced back to the hypocausts of ancient Rome, which first appeared 2,000 years ago. The ancient and respected Roman writer and philosopher Seneca recorded the invention of the hypocaust, noting it as an expensive innovation that only appeared in the homes of the wealthy and powerful. He was fortunate enough to have a hypocaust system in his own home, and fondly described the soft and regular heat that it provided with him. Hypocausts were created by creating spaces between the walls and beneath floors, and then installing a fireplace into one corner of a building. The heat from the fireplace circulated through these spaces and warmed the whole building, or in some cases, the whole public bathhouse. There are still places in the world today that don't have central heating, so it's a mystery that more use isn't made of this ancient technique. The odometer in your car keeps track of how much distance you cover when you drive. Speaking more generally, an odometer can be used to determine the distance from one place to another. When it was invented, it revolutionized map-making and route planning in the ancient world. We have Vitruvius of ancient Rome to thank for inventing the odometer, a task he completed just over 2,000 years ago. His first odometer looked a little like a wheelbarrow with one enlarged wheel full of pebbles. Every time the wheel rotated, one pebble was dropped into a small bucket beneath the device. As Vitruvius measured the precise diameter of the wheel before he fitted it to the device, he knew exactly how much distance was covered by each rotation. He could therefore determine the distance between 2 points by counting the number of pebbles that the odometer deposited into the bucket. After he came up with this genius invention, journey planning in the Roman Empire no longer involved quite so much guesswork, and maps became far more accurate. The odometers of today may no longer use pebbles, but they still work to the same 2,000-year-old principle. Seen from above, this incredible invention in Gonabad, Iran, looks like nothing more significant than a series of puckered holes in the ground. That's misleading. This is actually one huge, interconnected structure known as Kyaris, and it's an ancient miracle of hydraulic engineering. It's one of the greatest surviving examples of an irrigation system known as a qanat, a form of water transportation technology that's still in use in some parts of the world today. Faced with life on a dry plain 3,000 years ago, the ancient Persians knew that the only way to survive was to make water come to them, and that's what Kyaris does. The system is made up of underground tunnels that run on for miles, connecting wells to underground reservoirs. The holes visible from above provide ventilation to the tunnels and also provide access for water collection. Building just one average-sized qanat would take many years, as all the work was done with picks and shovels. Building something the size of Chiaris must have taken decades. Systems like this still exist in Libya, Turkmenistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. In the modern age, we understand the principle of a vaccine. A small amount of a disease or poison is introduced to the body, and the body works out how to create antibodies to protect itself against the disease, thus developing immunity. Amazingly, Mithridates, the sixth of Pontus, seemed to understand the basics of this principle 2,100 years ago. The paranoid ruler feared being poisoned by one of his enemies, so he deliberately ingested small amounts of poison and treated himself with honey to recover. He had reason to be paranoid. His own father had been killed by poisoning. Over time, he began to add herbs and other unknown ingredients to the honey, coming up with the formula to a drink known as Mithridate. With this invention, the king genuinely believed that he'd invented an antidote to every poison in the world. He later regretted this choice, as during a later war with the Romans, he attempted to evade capture by drinking a lethal dose of poison. His invention had worked too well. Mithridates was immune to the poison and was eventually captured and killed. Sadly, he took his Mithridate recipe to the grave with him, so we'll never know if he truly invented a universal antidote or not. As far as modern scientists are concerned, death rays haven't been invented yet. They're a conceit of science fiction. Archimedes might not agree with that assessment if he were alive today, as he's said to have come up with one almost 2,200 years ago. This genius of the ancient world came up with a basic-looking design that involved little more than a massive parabolic disc and a huge mirror to capture the rays of the sun. The inventor believed it was possible to focus and direct sunlight at enemy ships, setting them on fire from a long distance and defeating them easily. History doesn't tell us whether he ever built a working model or not, but if he did, it might explain the existence of the vitrified forts that exist all over Europe. The vitrification process of stone results in the stone becoming glass. It requires the stone to be subjected to temperatures in excess of 1,000 degrees centigrade for several hours in order to succeed. A conventional fire wouldn't do this, but the Archimedes death ray might. Perhaps that's what happened to sites like Quaidle Hill Fort in Scotland, along with several other ancient forts on Europe's coastlines. The idea is simple, but potentially very effective. We've already seen an astonishing ancient water management system from Persia. Now here's another one from ancient China. It's taken 4 years for archaeologists to dig out the remains of this hydraulic enterprise on the country's eastern coast, but it was time well spent. This system was built more than 5,000 years ago, after the people of the Yangtze River Delta became tired of the flooding that came around every year and ruined their crops. To solve the problem, they spent years of their lives digging up the earth to make canals, adding strategic dams to their canal system, and even including a few gates to allow them to manage and direct the flow of the water to suit their purposes. This allowed them not only to prevent floods, but also to reserve water so they could irrigate crops during drier times. The canals eventually became transportation and trading routes as they expanded, allowing Liangshu ancient city to develop and flourish. Sadly, a flood so large that even this sophisticated irrigation system couldn't control it arrived 800 years later, burying the whole area under 3 feet of clay and hiding this amazing invention for centuries. We're not done with amazing ancient waterways yet, because here's another example from the Inca in South America. Water was sacred to the Inca. They viewed it as both a physical and spiritual concept, and they treated it with respect. That's why they built the Inca Misana Temple in Ollantaytambo in Peru to give thanks to the gods who provided them with water. And it's an astonishing spectacle of civil engineering. Water flows through the fountains of the temple, even at 9,000 feet above sea level, thanks to a canal system that extends for several miles through solid rock, extending into the 4 main basins of the Patacancha Valley. Working during the 13th century, the Inca devised their temple full of pools, waterfalls, and other water features according to solid hydraulic principles. managing to avoid hydraulic jumps where necessary, and even taking advantage of them in some places. They applied a mysterious coating to the rocks to make it impenetrable and prevent leaks, and created drainage channels to counter the effects of landslides and erosion. It would be a challenging project for a civil engineer in the 21st century. How it was pulled off successfully in the 13th is almost unthinkable. Here's a controversial statement. The criminals of 2,000 years ago were better at gilding than the best master craftspeople living in the world today. We have evidence to back that bold claim up. Hundreds of gold-gilded items have been retrieved from ancient Egypt and further afield over the years, some of which were found in tombs and others in temples. The quality of the gilding work is so incredible that we wouldn't be able to replicate it today, even if we used the most advanced electroplating technology currently available to us. Electroplating, by the way, wasn't invented until the 19th century. For 1900 years after the examples you see here, nobody could get close to this standard of gilding at all. Analysis of some of the objects has shown that a very thin layer of mercury was employed as a solvent to bind strips of gold to the objects they decorated, a dangerous method that health and safety laws would prevent today. The criminals of the past would use this gilding technique to disguise worthless objects as something more valuable, and part fools from their money at market stalls. We have to admit it was a neat trick. The steam engine is viewed as the breakthrough that made train travel possible during the 19th century. But there was nothing new about the technology that powered those early trains. You can trace the existence of the steam engine all the way back to the Aeolipile, better known as Heron's engine, on account of the fact that it was invented by Heron of Alexandria. History might give Heron too much credit, though. He finished his design during the 1st century based on earlier work performed by Ctesibios over 100 years earlier. Heron's spherical engine is operated by boiling water beneath a steel sphere, which spins on its axis as steam begins to erupt from nozzles placed on opposite sides of the sphere. Heron worked on his design over time and eventually found a way to boil water inside the ball rather than externally. If anything, Heron was too far ahead of his time. He couldn't come up with a practical purpose for his engine, so he eventually grew bored with it. It took Taqi al-Din looking at his work with fresh eyes 1,600 years later before something that looks more like the modern steam engine began to take shape. And that led to the invention of the steam train in England 100 years after that. Before the invention of calendars, humans had almost no way of keeping track of time over a period of several months or years. That's a strange concept to think about, so we assume that the calendar must have been one of humanity's oldest inventions. It is, but it might not be as old as you think. The world's oldest known calendar can be found in Warrenfield in Scotland, and it's approximately 10,000 years old. Don't expect to see months marked on it, though. Instead, it was a way for people living during the Mesolithic era to track the movements of the moon. The calendar system is made up of 12 pits that would, in the distant past, have each contained a wooden post. This crude method of tracking time would have made each month of the year identifiable in accordance with the principles of the lunar calendar, and allowed the hunter-gatherers who built it to prepare for the arrival of seasonal or migrating animals in their area, so they could go out and hunt them. It would be 5,000 years before another type of calendar was invented anywhere else on the planet. Earlier on, we looked at the Archimedes' death ray and wondered whether it was ever used in battle. We don't have to speculate about Greek fire. It was definitely used on the enemies of the Byzantine Empire, and you can think of it as a kind of 1,400-year-old flamethrower. History tells us that Greek fire was first used at Constantinople in 673 and was a devastating thing to see in action. Some reports even say that the fire spread across the water, leaving ships with no chance of escape. No other army in the world had access to such a lethal weapon, and so it played a crucial role in the spread and dominance of the Byzantines. Over time, they even developed hoses to direct the fire over wider areas. Modern military tacticians would describe this strategy as shock and awe. Understandably, the Byzantines kept the ingredients of Greek fire a secret, and so it's been lost to time after the fall of the empire. Most scientists believe that it involved sulfur, phosphide, and quicklime, but the remainder of the composition is unknown, and we don't know how to recreate it. Perhaps that's for the best. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!